Hey everybody, and welcome to our special series of Thrive, coming to you straight from the AICPA Engage show in Las Vegas. On this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Sabrina Parris. She's the president of Honeycomb State Tax Strategies. Sabrina is not just a brilliant tax strategist, she's also, you ready? A beekeeper as well. And she shares how success in accounting mirrors the magic of running a beehive. And it's all about having the right strategy in place. We also chat around the buzz, get it, around AI and why great mentorship isn't just helpful, but it's completely there to transform your career. So let's jump right into the conversation with Sabrina.
Welcome to Thrive, a Paychex business podcast, your blueprint for navigating everything from people to policies to profits. And now your host, Gene Marks.
So first of all, Sabrina, Honeycomb State Tax Strategies. Why Honeycomb?
So I'm a beekeeper.
You are?
Yeah, just a hobby beekeeper.
Why didn't you tell me that before we started talking? That was going to take over our whole conversation. So you're a beekeeper in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that like a bee-friendly state?
It is okay. For sure, yeah. So it's funny, my newest batch of bees not doing great this year, but every year's different. But yeah, I really kind of was thinking about how kind of like the bees are so strategic and how they set everything up. And I thought that really tied in really well with what I want to do, which is kind of think about big picture strategy and help CPAs with their clients in that regard.
That is amazing. First of all, you know what? To heck with this conversation. I have a million questions to ask you about beekeeping. I guess that'll have to be another time for another day. But, why state tax strategies? Does that mean you focus on just state and local things?
Yes. So I started my career at Deloitte long time ago, about 20 years ago, and I was in the multi-state group.
Right.
Our group didn't do any compliance. We just did research. It was attorneys and CPAs, and it was all research and strategies that would support the compliance groups.
And this was in North Carolina as well?
It was, Charlotte office. And I moved to Hickory, just an hour away, but much different client base there. Smaller CPA firms, and what I realized was that smaller CPA firms do have that need, but it's not as frequent, and they don't really have the resources for it, right?
Yeah.
They can't have a full-time SALT person necessarily,
right.
And don't really know where to go. And when the pandemic hit and a lot of employers were dealing with, letting their employees work and suddenly it was a big problem for a lot of CPAs, right? Like this thing that they hadn't had to give much thought to. And what I hate to see is for CPAs who have very good clients to tell those clients, hey, you've outgrown me, I'm going to refer you to a bigger firm. What I'd like to see them do is keep those clients and then bringing subject matter experts as needed.
Sure. I mean, really, like, state tax in North Carolina, is that complicated? I mean, you guys are such an easygoing state. Is that complex?
I wouldn't say North Carolina in particular. I think it's more kind of how Nexus works and how allocation and apportionment works. And, a lot of this is just, it's not something I see a lot of like first and second years and even seniors really getting exposure to that.
Right. It's a great niche. It really is. And it's funny about it in the accounting profession. I mean, it was there was once a time, I think, for CPAs, you were a CPA, so therefore you were an expert on all things financials, tax,
right.
And obviously nowadays that is not the case. And you learn that when you work at a Deloitte. And you're like, wow, this is like super specialized. I mean, there's something for everything. So your clients, I'm assuming, mostly are accounting firms.
That's correct. It's mostly accounting firms, tax practitioners. Now, sometimes we usually do it as kind of a white label thing where I'm kind of working behind the scenes with them. Yeah. But sometimes they'll refer the client to me directly, and we just kind of loop in the tax pro as necessary.
How do you bill for that? Do you just bill by the hour after the fact? Do you charge? I'm going to tell you, in my business, so we do technology consulting. We do blocks of time. So we're $185 an hour across the board, and we sell minimum 4-hour blocks. People buy it, and then we charge against that block in 15-minute increments, and that's what it is. Did you do anything like that similar? Or
that just might be a good idea. What I've been doing, I've been trying to get away from kind of hourly billing and get more towards like value billing, or even just kind of give the clients a range up front. So we do a discovery and I kind of get an idea for the scope, and I'm getting better at kind of like taking a look at that scope and figuring out what makes sense, where it makes sense for me and where it makes sense for the clients.
Yeah.
Give them a range. If things come up along the way that we didn't anticipate, right? Just call and let them know, hey, there's this other thing that we need to look at. But so far, that's been working pretty well.
But people call you with questions, and some of them might take hours of research. Some you might be able to answer in 15 minutes.
Right.
But it's like a pain in the neck to like be billing for like an hour here or an hour there or whatever, and then collecting on it.
Right.
And then also the kind of work that you do. I bet you it's like super critical at that moment until you give the answer, and then like a month later, they're like, "Wait, what did we call Sabrina about?" Like, well, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard.
That does happen a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, the alternative, right, especially if a firm has a lot of multi-state needs, or like different people on their team that have needs and just need to know they can go somewhere without having to like get a separate engagement.
Yeah.
A lot of times we put those firms on retainer.
Yeah. I'm telling you, the block of time thing has worked really well with us, and we generally deal with small businesses, small and mid-sized businesses. So we haven't had any collection issues since, because we don't provide services unless there's a block on account.
Yep.
And it's actually worked really, it's pretty good. The only thing I'm trying to get my arms around is the credit card. We take credit cards.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, Jesus, we're paying like a 3% fee on this. That's like a big deal. So how do we bake that in and whatever? But anyway, it's worked okay, for us.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the profession itself. So you have been exposed to a lot of CPA firms, mostly in the North, in North Carolina.
Well, actually, I work with firms all over the country.
Why?
So.
Because they might have a client who has an employee that's moving to North Carolina, kind of thing.
No, it's more that. It's more that a lot of these folks just don't have a firm understanding of, it's a lot to keep up with. So, for example, the software that I use that has a robust state and local tax law, database that I can look into, like that software is kind of cost prohibitive for a firm that's only going to use it twice a year.
Right.
So, it doesn't have to be a North Carolina issue. It can be any state. And sometimes I'm familiar, sometimes I'm not. But unlike this firm, I have the robust research,
So even if you're not, if a question comes out about some state and local issue in Mississippi, there are circumstances where you can be like, okay, I'm not a super expert on it, but I've got the resources to figure it out. So let me do that. Right.
And for an example, a good example of that would be the pass-through entity tax. Are you familiar with how? So basically the way it works is businesses that are set up as a partnership or an S corp, in order to get around the SALT cap at the federal level, right? They states have built into the law, like, hey, you can pay your business taxes at the partnership or S corp level, even though typically that's passed through the owners.
Right.
So there's a lot of planning that goes into that, and a lot of these states just pass these laws really quickly without
thinking it through.
And so there's a lot of nuance to it, and that's the thing that comes up a lot. And a lot of states have those now, and they're all a little bit different. But it's really intimidating if it's not a thing that you've ever worked with before.
All right, well, thanks, Sabrina. Based on that topic you just talked about, we've lost half of our audience, watching this. The other half have now fallen asleep. So
nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, it's important stuff. I really realize that. Let me talk about technology.
Yeah.
Okay. You are working with a database that can give you information and support you in resources for, say, North Carolina and other states as well. Is this like a ChatGPT kind of AI system, or is it just like a straight knowledge base that you're querying?
That's, I'm going to bore you some more, but
try me, challenge me.
That area is growing so quickly and so rapidly. So 2 years ago, we were very cautious on at least the tax research aspect of it, right? We were like, you cannot count on any kind of AI, ChatGPT, or any other ones for tax research. It's not ready. But over the past 2 years, it's gotten better, and we're getting closer and closer. And there are software companies that are kind of harnessing that power. And then, it's kind of like an overlap experience. So with the traditional research, if you remember 20 years ago, we had these giant 3-ring binders.
I do.
I
do.
And so you'd have to go through that to look at the tax law. And now it's all online. And kind of the next step of that is how AI is going to layer in and integrate with that in order to make it really understandable and really easy to look at and really easy to get answers.
But you're not there yet.
We're not quite there yet.
Okay. Do you think that AI could replace you?
So I think we're all in danger of AI replacing us if we don't have a game plan, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the thing you and I bring to the table is the human element. It doesn't matter whether that's accounting or podcasting or all the different things. Bringing the human element is what's going to keep us relevant.
Yeah.
And so you have to really be cautious of how you use the technology and not letting it replace you completely in terms of interacting with people and connecting.
You know, you talk to anybody who works, you know, and uses generative AI, and I do. I don't know if I use ChatGPT like all the time.
I do too. Yeah.
Right. It is. It's all about the prompt. It's all about the prompt.
Yes.
And I got to be true. I am a CPA. I've been a CPA for like 30 plus years. I wouldn't know even how to formulate a question about North Carolina sales or local tax. Like I wouldn't even know the prompt to use.
Right.
And if I don't know that, not that I'm such a smart guy, but I mean, like, I am assuming that a lot of your clients and CPAs, whatever, who have other specialties, they wouldn't know that either. They're always going to need you because you know the questions to ask.
Exactly.
And then, of course, when you get the responses, your job is to, first of all, validate those responses, that they are, you know, that they're accurate. And then you got to communicate and explain that back to your client. So I don't think ChatGPT can ever do that. I mean, anyway, I think you're safe.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks. I think you are too.
I think you'll be okay. But you do see that having a big impact on your profession, though, is that?
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you're not learning and adapting, you're going to get left in the dust.
What about like agentic AI? Actually, like, do you do state and local tax returns? I'm assuming, correct? So
I actually mostly stay out of the compliance. I do sometimes do support in terms of work papers and calculations and even compliance review.
Okay.
But I don't typically do the actual tax returns.
So you're straight consulting, in other words. Like you're just telling this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And good luck with that. And that's what have you had any interest in doing? Like, do you think with AI it might become easier to do the compliance work? And
probably, yeah.
And that could be like another area of work that you could do? It's
something I'm exploring. I'm exploring it especially on sales tax because, again, there's solutions for huge companies, but there's not a lot for the small and mid-size, and like figuring out a way to use AI to kind of fill that gap in the market.
Sure. Is there a lot of overlap in your knowledge? I mean, if you're a sales and local tax expert in North Carolina, or an income tax expert, a state tax expert in North Carolina, is there I mean, is it easier for you to be a state tax expert for Nebraska or Mississippi? I mean, I know that the rules are different, but it's kind of in the same space. Do you know what I mean?
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of patterns. I mean, all the states can have different laws, but there are patterns to be aware of. Sort of like the pass-through entity tax we were talking about before, and how that's kind of a pattern that's going on right now. Another pattern is when you're looking at apportionment, a lot of states are moving more towards 100% sales as opposed to considering how much payroll and property you have in a state.
Right.
So as those like trends and patterns are evolving, like being on top of that is critically important.
And can AI help you do that?
Yes.
And couldn't AI help you expand your practice? Like, you think to yourself, it can help me do things faster and be more productive.
Right.
I got my act together in North Carolina. Who borders North Carolina? South Carolina. Why don't I I'm going to expand into doing a specialist in South Carolina because I have the resources to do that, and and AI can help me. That's a potential for you as well, right?
It is, yeah. And I mean, just an example. South Carolina is there's a lot more regulatory, like you have to apply for this license and that license when you start a business. And so, the natural progression of starting in North Carolina and then eventually like expanding into South Carolina, it can be a real shock for small businesses.
Let me give you some advice, okay? My wife is addicted to Southern charm, right?
Yeah.
Don't go into South Carolina, okay? Go north, go to Virginia,
right,
okay? That's where you should expand into, okay? Fair enough. All right. That's technology. Let's talk about talent.
Yeah.
Okay? So you've been a CPA for how many years?
17 years.
Wow. Okay. So you've seen the profession.
Yeah.
You've seen the recruiting challenges that we have had. Why do you think this profession has had such problems attracting people to it?
So it's pretty simple. We've got two major problems in the industry right now: pay and making accounting attractive. Nobody wants to work 80 hours a week, period, but you especially don't want to work 80 hours a week for less than six figures when you could have a different college major and be making six figures straight out of college and work 40 to 50 hours a week.
Agreed.
Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone pick accounting?
I agree.
And
by the way, you are
like
you have no idea how many people have sat in your chair and like you would agree with. You know what I mean? That's it. So how do you fix it?
So, people love to dance around the pay issue. Oh, well, back in my day. No, you have to stop right there. This is a different time. You have to get forward thinking. To fix the pay issue is really simple. You got to raise fees. If you raise fees, that's like dollar for dollar going to your top line and gives you more that you can pay yourself and your employees.
Sure.
So that's the biggest and fastest way to get there. Now, if you think about ways you can increase fees, you have to think about where the value add is for your clients, right? What are they willing to pay more for? And a lot of times that is the consulting.
Yeah.
So you want to get as much of your revenue as like recurring revenue, like monthly revenue as possible, spread it out. We've got to get out of this mindset of everybody's tax return has to get done between January 1st and April 15th. We've got to get away from that.
Yeah.
And that solves a lot of problems right there.
People also talk about the hours as well. I mean, like younger people don't want to work the kind of hours that, it's a generational thing. And people in my generation were like, well, back in the day we used to work, 150 hours a week, because it was busy season and we were very busy.
Right.
And you give that line to somebody who's 23 years old, they're like, well, dude, you're insane. I'm not going to do that, particularly for the compensation that's available. How do you fix that? I mean, do we have to have a busy season? Is that really necessary?
I don't think it is. And this is something else I get a lot of pushback on. Now, this comes really natural for me. At Deloitte, April 15th wasn't even a blip on my radar. Didn't even think about it.
Why?
So we extended everything.
Yeah,
Extending was the default.
Yeah.
You had to wait until you got audited financials from the audit team.
Yeah.
And then that's
so that
when
by
our work
default
really began.
pushed you back anyway because you weren't getting them in time.
Sure.
Right.
So, really our job started to ramp up in the summer. After 4th of July, that's when we really buckled down and had those long weeks through September 15th and October 15th.
Extending returns as well is that's just a communication issue with your clients.
It is.
And most clients think like, oh my God, if I extend my returns, I have more of a chance of getting audited or what. And it's like, no, it doesn't make a difference, And if you can extend and spread out the hours, then you create a better culture,
Yeah, for sure. And, if you have clients that don't want to go on extension, you can tell them, fine, but that's a premium service.
Sure.
If you want the rush delivery, you pay a premium for that. And so if it matters that much to you,
right,
you can put the financial incentives in, put parameters around it. Like we only file during busy season X number of returns. And once those spots are filled, they're gone. Everybody else goes on extension.
Got it. It is a, so you're saying it's a compensation issue, pay issue.
Right.
It's a work balance issue.
Right.
Because who wants to work someplace where you're working all these hours during quote unquote busy season? What about certifications as well? Like I always thought that was like a barrier. My son's a manager at PwC. He's like really happy. He likes his job a lot. He went to Pitt and I'll never forget, he finished 4 years at Pitt. And then he tells me, dropped on me. I'm not even paying attention. He's like, oh, yeah, well, to sit for the CPA exam, I have to do another year. That's what the requirement is in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. I got to pay for another year of college education so you can sit around and drink beer and take an accounting class so you can sit for the CPA exam. You know what I mean?
Right.
I sense that we've hit the limit on that and things are turning around. But what are your thoughts on certification? Do you think it's too much? Do you think is it at the right level?
I think, certification's critically important, but I don't know how much the fifth year adds in terms of getting people prepared for the profession.
Right.
Now, I know I got a lot out of my fifth year. I'd actually planned on getting 150 hours by completion of my undergrad, but Deloitte wanted me to get the fifth year anyway, and I actually got a lot out of it. But that's not the same story for everyone, and it can also be prohibitive for a lot of people. I mean, I had a car with 200,000 miles on it, and I'm like, okay, buddy, you got to get through one more year. Can you just get 12 more months?
But it doesn't bother you at all if the requirements are moved back to, say, 120 hours, that doesn't bug you that you're like, hey man, I had to do 150 hours. You know what I mean? They got to do it.
No,
Doesn't bother. I feel the same way.
I don't like to compare. I mean,
I
want better for the
was.
next generation. Just like we want better for our kids, I want better for the next generation of accountants.
I think that's great. I totally agree with you. Okay, you've worked with a bunch of CPAs, both individuals, small firms, regional, larger firms, or whatever. You must have come across a lot of firms that you are like, these guys are crushing it. Like, I love these guys.
Yeah.
They run a great firm. This kind of firm I would work for if I were, crazy enough to want to do that. What is it about without naming names?
Sure.
What is it about those firms that's
the
so
cool
special?
thing about AICPA Engage is that's where you're going to meet a lot of those people, and that's where you're going to get a lot of their ideas because they're very generous with their ideas.
Talk to me about some ideas. What have you heard?
Automate everything you can, but again, don't automate out yourself, right? Don't automate out the human element. You don't want your clients just talking to robots all the time, but whatever you can automate so that you can really make those human interactions worthwhile, that's. And so they invest in the technology, they invest in the people, they make sure their company is a good place to work.
Sure.
And a lot of the other things kind of fall into place.
Right. So what about culture in those firms? What firms have you run across where you're like, this is just a good place to work?
Right.
What do they do?
So they spend a lot of time on the front end making sure people are a good fit. And my personal philosophy with hiring is that technical skills can be taught. If someone, as long as they have the minimum requirement, an accounting degree, some experience, maybe not if they're fresh out of school. But the real important thing is, what kind of problem solving skills do they have? What kind of people skills do they have? Do they work well in a team? And if you can start structuring your interviews and your hiring process and your recruiting process to really get to the root of what are your core values as a company, and how do you find potential employees that fit those core values? And then the technical stuff can fall into place. You can send them to AICPA Engage to get their CPE.
I agree. All right, Sabrina, so final question. You go back to your college age self and you've got some advice to give, knowing all that you've learned about the world. What advice would it be?
I would say seek out mentors and sponsors, and it has to be both. Mentors can give you guidance, and sponsors are looking out for you in your career. And you need both men and women, and you got to seek that out, and you got to be proactive, and you got to ask. It's so important. You've got to be forward thinking, and I was not nearly forward thinking enough when I was that age, but if I could instill that into someone else, I think it would serve them well.
Did you have any mentors or sponsors as you were getting older?
I did, yeah. I found mentors were easier to find. Sponsors were a little bit trickier. We're only a few generations into women having such a presence in the workplace that we do now. And, for 20 years, we've had more accounting graduates that are women than men. And yet, we're not seeing that same percentage at the senior manager and partner level. Yeah. And so it's a thing that we have to learn as women that men have been doing since the beginning of time, and look out for each other, build people up, and kind of give to others what we've been given.
You know who would agree 100% with what you just said is Kathy Engelbert, the former CEO of Deloitte.
Yeah.
So she was on this podcast.
Oh.
I've known her since freshman year at Lehigh. We're in the same freshman dorm, so I've known her when, I've known her for a long time. And we were having the exact same conversation about mentors and sponsors. And she specifically said that in her career at Deloitte, she named 2 sponsors that she had that completely made the difference. And she was as a woman, she was the first woman CEO of a Big Four firm.
Right.
Way outnumbered by men, but there were some men in her life that saw her capabilities, sponsored her. She left Deloitte for a couple of years to raise her kids and came back as well, and was given the opportunity to do that. And she gave me the same speech about the importance of having that kind of sponsor.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, it really is. Sabrina, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you spending the time.
Yeah, that was fun.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you would like to hear on Thrive? Please let us know. Visit payx.me/Thrive Topics and send us your ideas or matters of interest. Also, if your business is looking to simplify your HR, payroll, benefits, or insurance services, see how Paychex can help. Visit the resource hub at paychex.com/works. That's WORX. Paychex can help manage those complexities while you focus on all the ways you want your business to thrive. I'm your host, Gene Marks, and thanks for joining us. Till next time, take care.
This podcast is property of Paychex Incorporated 2025, all rights reserved.